with some good news from Leron. What's happening is
What's happening in my world? Two things mainly. Number one is our team is producing more code faster than ever, and they're often going back to us and are like, "Great, what do we work on next?" So the product team now has to adapt, and we've done things like built custom Claude code skills to help produce product requirements. We give them to a developer. Developer looks at this and he's like, "This is like 1,000 lines. You want me to read this?" No, you don't read it. You ask your AI to read it for you, summarize it for you, and that's how we work. So on the product side, that's how we're speeding things up. And then QA now has to deal with more testing than ever. And, in the olden days, we would just go hire more QA people. But in the real world, that's not really an option, right? So now the entire kind of pipeline has increased, right? Since we were talking about like body and muscles, it's kind of like if you could bench press 1,000 pounds and you had the muscle power to do it, your ligaments may not be so happy about this, right? And like all the other things in your body would need to also
Yep.
change to be able to accommodate this new world order, right? So we're working on that. And then the other thing here is I just had a meeting with finance and they're like, "Hey, how are you guys going to be charging for like AI in your tool?" We're like, "What a great question. We plan to do the beta. We've talked about this here. We're pretty close, right? And some of the folks have volunteered for our AI beta. Adam showed it. We're going to baseline and we're going to see how users are using the tool. I very strongly believe in a free tier that provides value. But if you're sending 2,000 messages a day to the AI tool, like I think there should be some sort of price kind of a addition that's taken place there. So we're kind of figuring all these things out as we speak.
Very cool. A few questions if I could, Leron, because of course, you know, big news this past week, obviously Anthropic sent the stock market
Shockwaves.
into a
Yeah.
freaking spiral downward, and it's starting to recover. Are tools like this also getting better, or do they give you code vulnerability review built within, or are there still third-party tools you're using to submit like CDI pipelines and things like that? Like, how do you commit code and those types? Has that changed
Yeah.
in the era that we live in today?
Definitely, right? So before AI, when you would in a mature CI/CD pipeline, you have built-in scans. So when you check in code, it's like, "Oh, are you using this library over here? It has a vulnerability. Like you need to do something to fix it. I'm not going to allow you to check this code in at a very high level." Now, what we use a third-party tool for AI code reviews to make sure the code is written in a high quality manner. And developers are kind of like a prickly bunch, right? So when you get them a new tool, they're like, "Oh, we should just build this on our own. Why do we need this?" But they've adopted it and they like it, and it makes them go faster. Now, we still have a human code review that happens at the end of all this. But the other thing that we've done is when you write code, you should actually, and a lot of these models have built-in tools to actually do a code security review, right? So before you even check your code in, before you even go through the AI code review, before you go to the human code review, you ask your own AI to just give you a code review of your stuff, then you check it in. And so it's kind of increasing much like security, right? The number of layers that we have to get through to maximize the odds of having really secure code. And then the other favorite thing I love addressing is if you read the news, they say, "Oh, AI produces code that has security vulnerabilities." Like, yeah, it does. But guess what? So do humans. And humans have a way to handle that. And now we have to take that kind of methodology and figure out how to adapt it to the new world order.
So what made me think of, because I was actually going back and forth with this. Have you guys heard of this lady? Oh, one second, Ian, and I'll come to right to you. Have you heard of this woman? John Hammond interviewed her recently. Her name's Ava Ben. Have you followed her at all, Corey? She's chief of staff of Microsoft's incident response team, and she's starting to get out there more in the circles. But she brought up her involvement with OWASP, and which a few years back we had one of the founders, the original founders and creators of OWASP, Jim Manico. So I'm curious, Leron, with AI, does it allow the ability to check against OWASP and those most commonly, for lack of a better word, egregious mistakes in the OWASP top 10? Are those things being incorporated, if you will?
I I haven't seen that specifically, right? So like the work that I do is limited. They won't let me touch the code of our tool, believe it or not. So I have to do this stuff on the side. And on my side projects, when I'm working on them, like I do want secure code, right? So I look at the various security tools that are out there, and SAST and DAST are two common ones. There's others. So like fundamentally, what are you really doing, right? You have a list of things to check against. That's what these frameworks give you. And the AI models are very good at taking a list and saying, take this list, review the code against this list, and then tell me true or false, right? So in my personal opinion, I haven't seen one, but that doesn't mean it doesn't exist or that it would be hard to create.
Got it. So Andy, to you, and then to Corey.
My question, Liron, is you've just outlined how AI is enhancing your productivity amongst your team, but putting stress on other groups. And what my perception is that as these tools become released to our team, to us, we're going to experience similar pressure on how we better adopt and work through them and build processes that allow us to be secure and to target and communicate these changes. That, by the way, would be something really worth discussing further, either on this call or on other calls.
So, Andy, you're 100% right. And I'll tell you personally, right, I use Claude Code. They update that thing once or twice a day. And it is overwhelming to be like, oh, there's this brand new feature, like agent teams, like agent swarms. That's a new feature that they just released. So now, like, I have this way of working and it works. Now I have to figure out how to get agent teams to work together. So it is like cognitively it's cognitive overload, right? Where if you don't keep up with this stuff on a daily basis, and the joke in the AI community is, oh, Andy, like you're doing it this way. That was so yesterday. Today we're doing it this way instead. And I think that eventually it's going to trickle down. But as a product team, our challenge is to give you the best possible tools and to abstract as much of that away so you don't feel like we're releasing 15 new features a week that you then have to go figure out how to learn.
And Liron, there's one last aspect to this, and that is the there are other small businesses that are advancing really quickly, and I could, Cintian is one of those. And when I was sitting on the product council for compliance, I said, guys, don't we have a way to take what we find and immediately implement it? And they went, no, we're not ready for that yet. And I'm giving you a heads up. That exists today. And I see that as a challenge to Kaseya when partners or other people are able to do things instantly, and we have to go through an old process. So not only is AI going to change things, but how do you incorporate and make us more effective and efficient in this?
I agree with everything you said. The only thing I would add to that is speed usually comes at a cost. And if you release too fast and you are not going through the proper verification and things like that, it would not surprise me that one of these super rapidly moving companies released code to production and there's a vulnerability or something bad kind of happens. Um, so just keep that in mind as well.
You mean something like, I don't know, imagine if CrowdStrike released code too quickly, Leron, and it had rippling implications. Um, Corey, imagine if that happened.
That's crazy. Yeah. I couldn't imagine. Who would do that?
They wouldn't be
Yeah.
using Claude at the moment, though.
Who would do that?
Yeah, over to you, Corey.
Okay. So for Leron, I have a statement I want to make because you sparked it here. Then I have a question directly for you in relation to what you're talking about. So as you said, yes, AI can create vulnerable code, right? That's common. So I talked about it at Write a Boom. We're seeing this on the firewall side. This is why after SonicWall releases a new firmware. When Fortinet releases new firmware, next thing you know, within 2 weeks, there's a new vulnerability, right? And you're like, well, didn't I just patch for this? Why is there this new patch? Because the bad guys are using these same tools and these same technologies. So what ends up happening is they get, let's say they have the old SonicWall code. They have the new SonicWall code from the new update. They put it into this AI generator to look at differences in the code and to help pull out new vulnerabilities out of it. And so they're working at this speed, and we have to keep up and align with that to be successful. So we're at the mercy of the human capability. So I 100% agree, and I'm on board with what Leron said around, yes, of course, AI can create, more, some vulnerabilities in code, but we're already doing it ourselves, plain and simple. The direct question for you is an issue that I kind of had yesterday. And it's a question I've been asking for a while, and I'm curious because you're now more and more and more involved in the AI aspect and implementing into this platform. Last time you showed us, it was a bot, a chat bot, right? To ask, hey, when's the last time Andrew ever logged into a VPN? So the problem I'm facing with the platform is obviously the adversaries are doesn't take a lot, but a little bit smarter. They're attacking from within the United States based organizations. It's tough for us to trust ISPs because it could tell you from the same IP you're in one of 3 states. So it's hard to do time distance travel within the United States, almost impossible, without generating a bunch of false positives. The AI aspect of implementing it in more than just a chatbot into the threat analysis, and the easy one that I'm staring at because this happened in this situation, was being able to analyze the first time that Andrew logged in from a VPN. Hey, we have all these logs, and now through our AI machine learning, we just identified this is the first time Andrew has ever established a VPN connection. Is that coming, and what is the likelihood of when it's coming?
It is coming. And we actually talked about this yesterday during the Kaseya Same Product Council. So what we are working on right now is doing production testing, stress testing on our machine learning hardware, right in the cloud for rare location. In other words, Corey, you're in Tennessee, right?
Mhm.
Corey's in Tennessee. And based on all the data that we have for Corey, he's a Tennessee guy. All of a sudden, he pops in New York City. That is a rare location for you, and that is an alert that we are going to surface for you. Now, again, you guys know the way that we do things. We release one small thing and then we build on it. So rare location is kind of an easy one for us to go and get out the door. And we have some customers in beta right now that are testing this right now. And Corey, actually, if you guys are interested, right, because we need to do stress testing and we need to make sure that we can handle the volume. So I'd love to talk to you offline about doing that. So rare location is one. The second one is the impossible travel scenario that we've talked about before. The third one that we actually talked about yesterday, it was somehow brought up, was VPN and device, right? So let's say you're a Windows guy, Windows 11 all the time, all the time, and all of a sudden we get a login for Corey that pops as Mac OS. That should be an alert as well. So we are very much going in this direction with anomaly detection. And then if we take that further, right, now you can use IOCs or respond rules to mix and match these things. So for instance, if you have an anomalous device and a rare location, that's something that you care about. So we are, as we release these things, we're going to go to this community, right? And the VPN thing came out of yesterday's meeting. The unforeseen device that you've never used before is something that we've kind of thrown around, and then we throw it at you guys, and you guys are like, yeah, we want that, we need that, or no, that's useless. So we kind of have the first 5, we'll call it, of these anomalous events that we plan to release, but we are very much going in this direction.
Thank you. You're muted, Andrew.
Thanks, Corey. Sorry about that. Gosh, it came in. It was about to say it and then went in and out of my mind. It'll come back later on. I hope. Well, one question also I did have for you, Leron. Are you going to be presenting at Connect? And if so, will it be around how you develop AI? Like what's going on this year for you?
No, I think I'm going to be doing like a SaaS alerts thing, and then maybe it could say the same thing. And then I was asked if I want to do a product council. So maybe I'll just use the product council and turn it into how we build stuff. But like the question I would have for you guys is, like, I don't think you guys are building software, right? So like our development methodology, like how useful is that for this community?
I, if I could jump in and then kick it off to the MSPs, Leron, I think it's tremendously important. I think the virtuous cycle is, roadmap, but what partners can, how they can, like what this call has been about. So I think depending on who's in that room, and get maybe 12 of MSPs of different size and complexity, you know, the roadmap and their maturity level. Like I see, you put someone like Corey in the room as an example, is going to have very different needs and scale versus maybe another MSP. And then, we've already talked about it here when I'm hearing a lot from the larger MSPs, they talk about margin compression. Well, margin compression is not just, from one thing. It's right. It's certainly from tools, it's from storage, it's from hosting, but and then you look at skilled labor, and that dovetails into the whole AI thing, Leron, where they're starting to leverage AI very, effectively in ticket triage, ticket classification, ticket routing, but there's not been what I would call structural expense, cut in expenses. They're not getting rid of people or staff, right? They're still making the ice cream or the, stuff the same way, just speeding up the process, but there's not a new ice cream maker. So I think they would be highly intrigued. And again, as I hand it to the MSPs to understand how you're developing, and where they fit maybe an advisory council as such. But that's just my thought. What do you guys think out there?
I will tell you that talking about the obstacles that you encounter while you incorporate more of this AI is very helpful to us because we have to then take what you're feeding us, so to speak, with tools and acceptance, and how we can process that all the way through ticketing, response, and communicate the value to our customers.
Yeah, alternatively, Andy, it's also, I think, if you understand, more of the process of an organization truly leveraging it,
Mhm.
because I foresee, people are, how am I going to use, we want to use Copilot, we want to use Claude, we want to use whatever. Like everything's if you're going to do this right with customers, it's going to start with assessment and assessment of their environment, assessment of their data. Most people don't have structured data. And right now we don't have on the margin, let's just say it's Microsoft, you can't scale Purview across all your customers. And
Andrew,
and
I
so
wasn't even taking it that far. I was saying how we process the enhancement they're giving us in
yeah.
our own processes and add
Un-
value that way.
Understand, but I'm saying my point simply is if you understand how someone like Leron is actually using this, right, in their business, it starts to give you insight into how would I go into a customer and start to have, executive level conversations. Hey, look, this is how our partners and our largest, supply chain is using this at scale. So let me ask you some questions. Anyway,
The
Leon, you're going to say something.
Yeah, the a couple things to keep in mind. Right, when I did the AI presentation a while back, I talked about how we have to keep in mind the technology adoption curve, right? So initially, computers gave you a piece of paper with holes in it. And where we are today is that grandma can now post vacation pictures on Instagram. And we started here, and after 50, 60 years, we got to grandma posting on Instagram. And when people pick up a new technology, they expect the iPhone that can do everything. But if you guys recall, the first iPhone couldn't even copy and paste, right? So we have to bear in mind that we are very early days. And so the early adopters are the people who are using Claude Code and figuring out how to cobble it together to get some sort of productive or positive output. And by definition, the early adopters on the early adoption curve are going to be 10%, right? So probably every place that you guys work, you may have one or two champions who are really good at this stuff and can just use it as a 10x force multiplier, while the average person, right, because these agents, right, have not matured sufficiently. They're kind of using it as a Google 2.0, and they are significantly more powerful. But as product people, it is our job to take the technology and then package it in such a way, right, where Wozniak connected the typewriter and television to the computer to give us the modern day computer, like that kind of changed things. So that is the stage that we are at right now, is that companies are actively trying to figure out how to connect the typewriter and TV to the computer to provide a user-facing product that actually is helpful um, on a day-to-day basis.
Really well said. Who else has some thoughts on, you know, potentially sitting in a room with Leron and wanting to understand things?
We were able to
Always
do that
important.
at DatoCon last year, and I found it tremendously helpful. So Leron appreciated all the feedback and gave us a lot of confidence in the direction the organization is going.
So
Awesome,
it's
dude.
going to be the three of us, me, Dave, and Andrew, and Ben.
Well, I think it gives us great
I'll show off.
context as to.
Someone's
Uh,
gonna say something.
I was saying, I think it gives us great context as to the development part and understanding deeper as to how it works and flows, which I think helps us give better ideas at the end of the day.
For sure. Good. All right. Well, Leron, thanks for kicking things off. How about other folks? Any wins, any things you guys want to share? Go, Enrique, go.
So the customer's customer that got breached last week, we signed him on Monday. So
Awesome.
we just had to give him a little scare tactic. I told him over the weekend, guys, we turned off our tools because we pay per license. These are all the attacks you were getting over the weekend. You have the quotes. If you have any questions, call us. Within 5 minutes, they call. So yeah, that's a good thing.
I'm telling you, I want to remind everybody on here of that. We had that one partner of ours who did an opt-out campaign for this offering and put everybody up for every one of their customers on a 30-day POC on the SaaS Alerts platform through us. And they had that data to show them at the end of the POC to say, hey, we're going to roll you over unless you opt out into this offering because here's the value. Here's what happened over the POC, which, as you know, a lot can happen in the cloud. So being able to have that type of ammunition, it's not even a scare tactic. It's legit, right? It's showing the amount of compromises and what everything people would be blind to of what's happening in their environment if they don't move forward with it. It's a really strong message.
It is.
Good stuff. Congrats, Enrique.
Thank
Who
you.
else? Other folks? Who else is going to be at Connect with okay, so let's see, Mike.
Connect, Kaseya?
Yeah. He'll be there. Good. Andy.
I'm waiting to find out.
Andy's doing some Zen. Can't tell. Sean, awesome. All right. So before I share my screen, so Ben, we were talking, speaking of code, and Claude code at that. And I always love to, dig into what you're doing. Your YouTube channel continues to grow. You keep, sharing really thoughtful things and provocative things that, MSPs should know about. And I thought it might make some sense to talk a little about what you've been up to.
Yeah, I got a chance to experiment a little bit with Claude Code as well. I was thinking of a project that I was sure existed somewhere out in the world, but it did not. So I, like many of you, probably get a lot of spammers or scammers messaging you, asking for this or that, or introducing themselves, and inevitably asking for some sort of bit of information. So I said, wouldn't it be cool if I set up like a secret sharing site that would share like encrypted information, but instead of actually giving them good information, it really allowed me to see where they were coming from geographically, either by their IP address. So I did spin up something. It took me about like 6 hours to go from concept to a pretty much fully completed product, which was really terrifying on how fast it was.
So in essence, a honey like cyber deception of sorts, Ben, or
Mhm. Yeah, I set this guy up right here, and it's basically it just looks like a regular old share a secret, and you can type in the secret that you want to share, and it'll generate a couple of links for you. It'll generate a control panel, and if we go to that, that's our control panel, and then it'll generate a public link that you can share with the scammer. And just going to the page gets you a little bit of information about them. Right now, I can see where I'm coming from in the world and all the way down to state level. And also added a couple of other different things you can add, like pulls like device information, a little bit of information as far as what the IP address is saying. But I wanted to take it a step farther. So if I go under settings and I enable require location to reveal, then if somebody goes to here and they click on the reveal a secret, it'll ask them for the location in their browser. And most people will hit, block. And it'll say, oh, you can't do that without actually like confirming. So I made it so you can scan the QR code with your phone. And this is going to freak you guys out. This is a really good demonstration as far as why you should never enable location sharing on your mobile device or even your browser. So I scanned it and I hit reveal secret, and it's asking me, do you want to reveal your location? I'll just say allow this time. And so I can see the secret on my phone. But if I go back to my control panel and I refresh here, it's actually pulling my GPS coordinates. And not only is it doing it once, but it's set up to do a beacon. So every single time, uh, as long as my browser is open on my phone, it's actually pulling the IP at the location repeatedly. And those coordinates, if you click on them, pretty much take you right down to my house.
that's wild, Ben.
So there I am. Like that is literally where I'm sitting in my house.
Well,
I
Ben,
can
let me
find
So
so
take a
many use
screenshot.
cases.
I'm coming over.
So we have multiple people talking. Who is talking first?
if you don't
Sujit?
want to come over, you can come over.
I was saying there's
I
so
just
many use
spoken, Ben.
cases for this.
Jeet's gonna find out where I live and hang out with me. That's fine. You guys are welcome to come over. I got plenty of room. I got a spare bedroom. But yeah, I thought and so here you can see kind of just like a raw logs of the device, the geographical location, the GPS if it was through if it's possible to get that, the agent operating system if they're visiting for the first time. If this is a new visit, you can mask or show the IP address depending on what you want to do. But basically, I thought of a concept, I fed it into Claude, and they came up with some starter code for me, and I wanted to make it a Docker image too, so that anybody could deploy it immediately. And it helped me do that. And when I wanted to make changes to it, sometimes I found that it would kind of get a little bit off course. So if I took what I already have, I started a new project, a new chat, and I threw it at it, and I said, "Hey, I'd like to do this." It would re-examine the code and give me much better and accurate results. And I noticed that if I had issues with it, I would just hit, inspect the code. And if there was any errors there, I could also just feed it the errors that I was seeing and it would adapt and fix the code for me.
Hmm. Ben, when you go back, can you go back to one of the early things you showed, which was the graphic, the map, like that
Mhm.
view? And my question is, do you really, could something like this just displace Shodan if you really spent some time on building this code?
Yes, that was one thing that I added in here was the quick lookups to those different products. So you could see if the IP address is on any of these threat intel lists.
Wow.
So
So, so in essence, you literally could build your own
yeah, with
threat
an API,
intel.
I could have pulled it, but I didn't have any APIs to really use here. But I just like, gave people at least the quick and easy way to look it up themselves if they wanted to.
Yeah, but
Um,
so you're linking the show. You could link to. Hold on. So, but my question, Ben, is you're linking there, which is awesome. But I mean, how much more steps? And this is I mean, an alpha version of Shodan.
mhm.
Is it not?
Oh, mostly just this is really just a matter of really tracking where they're come from. Shodan would at least show me if the IP address that's accessing my site has any sort of like open vulnerabilities or ports. One thing I did add that you might actually dig is I added an analysis tab that will basically summarize everything that it's seeing, and you can just copy this and put it in wherever. And this is not using AI. This is just using a regular old JavaScript to generate these summaries. But I thought that was kind of cool too. So it kind of
Wow.
just summarize everything that it's seeing. But
Corey, when you see something like this, like from a SOC perspective, could this be beneficial for what you're doing? Just curious. Obviously, this is something, like a pet project, Ben's,
it is.
but I'm just curious on a grander scale.
Yeah. Yeah, I definitely want to double click in it with you, Ben.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun.
And I was kind of reading chat earlier, so and I missed if you said it earlier. You said you have a YouTube video demonstrating this,
Yep, I do.
and you did or did not include your official geolocation on that YouTube video.
No, I did not.
Okay, it's good. Swatting is a thing, and you don't want that in your life. Okay, just want to make
I
sure.
don't.
Okay.
No, yeah, totally. That was one thing I was like, I guess I'll show them. I mean, I trust most people in here, but
Is there any, Corey, is there
but
any
yeah,
oh, sorry, go ahead.
go ahead.
I was going to ask Corey, any cyber deception that you guys use for can a client, quote unquote, choose that offering within and within the SOC? Do you guys ever use that?
We don't have that right now. No.
Okay.
Added a couple of different templates
That
too that we could basically.
hashtag Ben.
One thing that was suggested. So I would basically I would build these things and I would think of everything that I could, and then I would say, what am I missing? And I would ask the AI what, from an OSINT slash, scam baiter kind of perspective, what would you add? And it had some really great suggestions too. But one of the things that it recommended is, since I am tracking GPS coordinates, to actually like record it on a map and kind of like breadcrumb it out kind of thing. And I was like, oh, that's kind of stalkery, but okay.
So, Dave, did you have something? So you light up there, David. Oh, okay. Um, hey, Leron, as being an absolute novice coder, when you see what Ben did with Claude Code, like, is his intuition aligned at all with what, a team like yours does? And or from a threat actor perspective, does it give you kind of insights on how, I guess, quickly things could get turned up from with using a platform like this?
So Ben is a star for a reason, and that is because, like, back in the day when humans first invented fire, like Ben is that guy that's like, hey, look, if I rub this stick into this stone, like I can get the fire going, right? And there's a very small percentage of people who fall into this category, and then it just comes down to a matter of choice and whether or not you want to spend the time to learn how to build on what you have and just continue and scale it and do things like that. And the interesting thing is, when we hire brand new developers who are hungry, they are a lot more likely to use these tools, right? Because when they had to do their master's whatever computer science project, they were quote unquote cheating by using these tools to do all this stuff. So I think, look, it comes down to build stuff that people want and then figure out how to secure it and scale it. And the bad guys are doing the exact same thing. I was reading an article today about a hacker that used Claude Code and Codex to steal 140 gigabytes of Mexican taxpayer data just by like talking to Claude Code, right?
Wow.
So yeah, this is the new world that we're in.
Got it. Got it. Well, that was great, Ben. I really really appreciate it. Let me just share out my screen. I want to show you a few things. Bear with me. So let's go to Chrome, and Chip sent this over to me. Did you guys see this? I think it was just yesterday morning. So obviously this is insider threat, but just pretty staggering that someone within, so you have these large organizations like L Harris, and you'll see them all in the Beltway, right, Corey, that these massive companies that support the DoD and the government, and they have obviously clearance, etc. But this guy literally sold to the Russians. These are, obviously purpose built for the US government, vulnerabilities in these cybersecurity tools. And then the follow on, or if you want to read about it, it's right here that this former head of in a look at this defense contractor, and so you wonder, and I'm joking around, how important is CMMC if someone's doing this, and obviously I'm joking, right? But this is pretty obscene from what happened here, and I'm happy to put this in chat if do you guys want to read about this on your off
It's
time?
surprising that it only took them 4 years to find out. It started
Yeah.
in 2022. This is the part that amazes me.
Well, it isn't. It's actually a great point, Andy, is we're going to take a look at, some of the threat reports, but it's still, even to this day, and again, I'll lean on Corey for this a little bit, but when you look at, and I'll jump ahead and then I'll come back, I think it's so I have the Palo Alto 2026 threat report, and the bear with me, guys, um and the Sophos, and in the Sophos one, where is it here? Is it in this? But Andy, is what I'm trying to find. Yeah, here it is. This is what I want to show you, bud. I mean, the average days for patching. I
Totally
mean,
with you on this.
it's amazing, right? So it just shows, and the Palo, the actually the executive summary in the Palo report. Did I guys send that to you guys last time at all? If I didn't, I certainly can. Interestingly, like the SVP of Palo's Unit 42, which is their IR division, he's just like, this is, so much of this, and we talk about this every year, isn't novel, and can largely be prevented, Andy. So, again, we um anyway.
Yeah, with contractors like that, what good do we have? I mean, they're just gonna start to send this stuff at us.
Fair enough.
So go back to that slide real quick.
Which one,
The
Corey?
one you just had where it talked about the amount of time it takes. I'll call it dwell time.
Yeah, for patching.
Yeah, for patching, right? And so I work for a vendor where there's many firmware patches and vulnerabilities that come out. And I see this now. I see it from the inside now, where, yeah, first off, and I've heard this question on some of these vulnerabilities. Why didn't you guys know about this? Because the vulnerability has to be identified first. Majority of vulnerabilities aren't found by the vendor themselves.
Fair.
Usually it's third parties. So third parties from all aspects that you could think of are the ones that end up reporting some type of vulnerability. to the actual vendor. Then the vendor has to validate it. Then it has to get patched. Is it in the current patch cycle for the existing patching firmware or any type of patching update that they're going to put out? I mean, look at Microsoft, right? Half of the vulnerabilities have been around for a long time, finally getting around to patch it. And then how much do you put in? How much are you patching? Because then the more you patch, the more you run a risk of something breaking, something not working. It's a horrible cycle. And this is what we have to live with and deal with, where we start becoming very reactionary. So seeing it take, I mean, that's a long time. I was like almost a full year from that last article, but it does take some time that the adversaries can be exploiting it, and they know that they're able to exploit it because it's not patchable yet, because they know either they haven't been detected, the vulnerability hasn't been detected, the vendor hasn't patched it yet, or it might take a while for them to patch it. This is also why, like when I saw about CISA potentially going away, right? All that news that came out, I was like, man, this is very concerning because again, who is going to be the third party? Who is going to be able to kind of help control this and release this? And, you know, if we just consistently stay reactionary, we're going to continue to fail.
So of course, Sophos had a, you know, shocking, Corey, that, you know, they mentioned SonicWall here. but I show this because it highlights your point, literally, of what they're saying, right? You know, one point that, you know, was that, you know, as soon as, you know, the threat actors are looking at the code, just like you guys are, as you mentioned. And then the second thing is a lot of, you know, that, gosh, Corey, it was probably now, what, 3 months ago, when everybody's like, oh, there's another SonicWall 0 day. And so much of it was, as you eloquently put in your op-ed and LinkedIn and stuff, is like, there is not a 0 day this time. It is misconfiguration, not patching, et cetera, et
But
cetera.
and then so the infamous 2024 patch here, right?
Right.
It's not just having the patching available. So it's not just on, you know, because the previous article talked about, oh, well, it's taking a while for these vendors to patch. The majority of issues that I see is not just the vendors having a patch, it's the patch rolling out by the actual end user, right?
Well, that's this.
Yeah.
That's this right here, is that these life cycles. And by the way, I still, it baffles me, and I'd love for you guys all and you know, MSPs out there to bring it up in chat. Like a few things that just that came up in, you know, Eric Tildes' session at Write a Boom, the legal MSP legal expert. Is you know, what is your MSA, you know, your statements of work saying around patching? Because I still find a huge number of MSPs saying, yeah, we're patching, but when it comes to infrastructure, specifically, Corey, you know, they might have an endpoint patching through a SentinelOne. They might have their RMM patching doing Windows, but I still see day in and day out people saying, yeah, I can't use a vulnerability management platform until we sell, you know, because historically, right, this goes all the way back to the days of rapid fire tools. Rapid fire tools was introduced in essence as a sales tool, right? It was Green Bones. Oh gosh, Corey, what's their vulnerability? Open source.
Vaz.
Thank you, OpenVAS, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it was historically used as, you know, a sales tool. And MSPs are still, a lot of you, not a lot of you, a lot of MSPs are still caught in that mindset that I've got to go sell it. Well, if you're saying we patch your systems, you know, that vagueness is really bad. If you're not patching all systems. So.
I mean, and we also have an issue with how we're patching systems. I'm not going to call out any specific names because I think it's not a vendor issue, right? But RMMs, as an MSP, you probably heavily rely on RMM tools. And I've had to deal with it as an MSSP. The tool that we were using for years, it would say something's patched and it really wasn't. Right. The inaccuracies, the inability to, you know, appropriately report on these things. And this is where you get granular, and why I started leaning on a tool that only did vulnerability analysis and patching through that tool, not trying to be everything like an RMM tool tries to be, just because
For sure.
I was bit too many times.
For sure. Sujit, you had something, bud?
Yeah, just to actually line up with what Corey mentioned. We were doing at CMMC for one of our customers, and one of the proofs that the consultant had asked for was like, well, show me that everything's patched. And as I happened to dive into it, just like Corey mentioned, we assume the RMM is patching, and I go in there and it's the patch report in RMM is showing information error of some kind, just saying it wasn't able to collect the patch activity. And I go into Defender, and Defender's like saying, hey, guess what? You haven't applied all these patches in forever. That's why your secure score is so low. And I start digging into, well, what's going on? And it's just the fact that, the reporting was broken. We had assumed it was doing what it's supposed to. Nobody had bothered to validate. And because of that, it led me to dig a little further. And I found that in multiple other cases where just Windows Update is broke. RMM reaches out and says, hey, what's the status? It goes back and says, I don't know. And RMM is like, well, all right, I'll talk to you next week. And that's not exactly, a great process to have. So that is something we are working on and trying to sort out as well. Rolling in some additional scripts to fix those issues. So hopefully we can minimize what actually needs involvement. But the old adage of trust but validate it's something a lot of MSPs are still always falling very short of. I talk to people all the time. Guys in the $5 million club, the 10 million, have hundreds of employees, and they're still making those real basic mistakes of just assuming the tools are doing what they're supposed to, but no one ever goes in and actually validates. There's no periodic audit, because guess what? They're not making money from validating their own internal processes. They're making money by selling stuff, by getting more customers. And, there's kind of that misalignment of a priority there.
Yeah, the big issue is, if you've ever done system admin work, I'm sure you don't have enough fingers and toes to count how many times or how many machines where Windows updates is broke, right? It's expected. Which one this week? And then a lot of tools like RMM tools that push out updates, they give you a success criteria if they successfully issued the command. And so that's where a lot of the downfalls that I found from a lot of tools that I looked into over the years, right? They say, oh, successful. I pushed the command. We're good. No issue here.
Corey, Sujit brings up a really good point. Sujit, by the way, appreciate you bringing that up. there's countless stories I've heard over the years where, the RMM says this is patched and, like you said, trust but verify. It's not. My bigger question is, what about testing your security tools, right? I think we, as the industry, blindly, right? How do I know my EDR is firing correctly, right? How do I know? So Corey, what about that? As we as MSPs again are built around profitability.
Yep.
That's a lot of our goal, right?
Yeah.
And efficiency and standardization. We're not necessarily built to have a red team validating our tools. Where do we go with
I think it's more than that. It's more than just having a red team. We're going to tread lightly here.
Purple team.
I'm going to tread lightly. So I feel a majority of MSPs, the people that you're relying on to validate your patching, the people that you're relying on to validate your AV solution, again, whichever one it is, unfortunately, they're wearing too many hats. They're doing too many things, right? So I see organizations that, I ask them the question, who's providing your SOC services? And the answer is we are. Mm-hmm. There's a reason why it's more cost effective for you and more beneficiary for you to use a third party to manage your EDR. Something like your EDR is too expansive unless you have dedicated people that are fully focused on an EDR aspect, because any incident response cycle starts with the number one most important thing, and it's consistently evolving. That's the prepare protect phase. Because if you have the coolest tool in the world, if you don't know how to properly use it, it's useless to you. Same with SaaS alerts. SaaS alerts is a water hose of events and noise that come to you. If you can't properly manage it, it's useless to you. I've talked to so many MSPs that I'm like, okay, you got SaaS alerts. Awesome. Where's the alerts? They move it to a different inbox and they check it once a week. If you're checking alerts once a week, you have failed yourself and you have failed your customers. Plain and simple. This is why you need some type of third-party source that this is what they do. Create a partnership with someone. It's gonna end up costing you less in the long run.
For sure. Yeah. So, curious, you guys are mature. Like, do you guys do anything in that area around like, hey, how do we know our tools are actually firing correctly and are actually, being, correlating data correctly, et cetera, et cetera?
Yeah, well, we used to early on. So I was always a big proponent of Mimikatz. I love to blast that into an environment and see if it ever got picked up. And I go knocking on doors in the internal network. It was always a fun way to test. But as time went on, it was like, no, stop doing that. So we don't really have a process for it anymore. I mean, I guess really the only process at this point is me just kind of reminding the team that we need to audit our own processes and tools. So we obviously use rapid fire tools. We use a lot of these same Kaseya stack items, but I'll go in and I'll validate the actual reports, right? If it says, hey, we found these CSVs, sometimes it's just white noise. It's not an actual issue of any kind. So we validate, we feed back into the system.
Yeah.
So I do a lot of manual checks to just kind of validate the data that comes out. And then, especially with Microsoft, we spend a lot of time with best practices in the insider program. So Defender is always changing quite frequently, especially now with Business Premium, they've added on quite a bit. So continuing education is a massive point. I don't know how many folks here leverage GDAP, but it is the best way to make changes all across your clients. We recently just did the data RMM integration with 365 and rolling out GDAP and getting IT Glue integrated in there to try to kind of have more single pane of glass. And now with SaaS alerts, hopefully we'll be able to leverage templates to ultimately root out some of these reoccurring issues.
Unfortunately, it sometimes becomes reactionary as well, Andrew. So obviously, the larger you are, the easier it is to identify when something's not working, because unfortunately, all of us are at the mercy if you're using a third-party tool of that happening. Yeah. Third-party tools, vendors make changes all the time. They change rule sets, they change features, things just stop working. And so obviously the right answer is, you set up an audit with your SME to validate if things are working properly. But unfortunately, a lot of the times this becomes reactionary when you realize something just hasn't triggered, right? Maybe you had a severe event and you realize something broke and you have to go back and remediate that. So there is no easy answer. Obviously, it's easier the larger you are to identify because more things happen, more events happen. You know what your expected events that are coming through, but it's not an easy validation check.
Sure. So real quick in the last few minutes, just like I said, I'll share this guys with you, but thesis around continued where attacks are coming from is identity. 90% in Palo's case of their IR team this year. As we'll see, if I get to the Sophos was just about 70 in their IR team. Corey, just real quick from you, similar probably, would you say that, initial in terms of the attack is through some type of identity born, same for you, probably.
100%. Yeah.
Yeah. And so, and the other interesting thing, and again, not that this is shocking, we had the, who I think, Leron, you'd love chatting with. We actually had the director of Edge, Microsoft Edge, at Boom this year, who's responsible for their enterprise browser, all this, security enforcement around that. It was really interesting to talk to him, and again, not that it's shocking where, I would say today's, for lack of a better word, OS it's, the telemetry that he was saying they see is something to the neighborhood of 80+% of all work, right, is via browser today. So, being able to look through that lens and it becoming a larger attack vector is certainly, one thing we're going to see more and more of. So, yeah, I know we're at the top of the hour, but any thoughts on that closing as we move into see you, Dave. Thanks. So, Ben, why Linux full time?
I mean, I figured a while ago, Leron said, "Why aren't you running Linux?" And I was like, "Why am I not running Linux? Like everything we do is in the browser. Like,
right.
I can run Office in the browser. Everything else runs just fine. So
Right. All right. So, all right. Well, have an awesome week, everybody, and we'll look forward to seeing you next Thursday. Have a good one.
Likewise,
Take care.
stay
Thank
safe.
everyone.
Bye, everyone.